All right, well, welcome back to See Her Love, and we're so glad you've joined us for this series where I sit down with my mentors from over the decades, catch up with them, ask them questions about me, and listen to their thoughts on mentoring, leadership, and so much more. And today's guests and mentors are the amazing Art and Corina Kung, mentors to me in my early 20s, which was just only a few years ago. My leaders during my YWAM, for those who don't know YWAM, we'll talk about it, but it's Youth with a Mission experience in Winfield, British Columbia, Canada. And we're going to be talking about so much more. So, Art and Karina, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking us.
Woo!
Here.
And you guys haven't aged at all. Like, I look at you and I'm
What?
like, you guys look like the same when I was like in my early 20s. Amazing.
There's a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a mustache now, and it's weird, crazy gray hairs all over the place.
A
So,
little bit.
yeah.
But I can't believe it's been that long. I was trying to think. I think that was 20. I mean, I'm
No,
going
No,
to out myself of my age, but it was 20 some years ago.
it, should we? I happened to see this morning. I remembered that's the only journal of all the years of DTSs that I kept was your school year,
Yeah,
and
and
it was
DTS, the Discipleship Training School
yeah,
part of Youth with a Mission, right?
hmm
that was
That was the only journal
1990.
you kept?
That it's the only journal I've ever kept, and it's 1997.
Thanks.
Okay, there are people who are listening who were like, we weren't even born then. Like, what? It was 97.
It was pre-millennial. It was pre 2000 scare.
I
You remember
know.
that?
Yes, that's right.
It
Yeah.
was pre COVID, pre millennial,
Yeah.
pre everything that we never thought
Yeah.
would be happening. For our audience, can you tell us a little bit about you? So, Art, maybe go you first. Karina, tell us a little bit about you, what you're doing now, your role, passions, all that.
Okay. Well, what about me? Well, I'm an old man now, and we have a wonderful son. He's 22 years old.
Wow.
Just finished his kinesiology uh, portion of his degree, and now he's going to education. So that's I think how can I describe myself except that I'm just loving life. If you're asking what I do specifically, I serve as a chaplain with University Campus Ministries, and the campus that I serve is at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. So also at the we call it SAIT. At SAIT, I also serve as the interfaith liaison for the
Mm-hmm.
Interfaith Center. So that's how I occupy my 9 to 5.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So good. Karina, what about you?
For me, let's see where I'm at. Love being a mom. Love being an auntie. Um, in a stage in my life, I'm actually rediscovering myself.
Hmm.
So um, I left. Well, I resigned from a position as a daycare director, just feeling I think I need to be focusing on things that I have to get back to, which is part of something that happened when we moved back to Calgary. Building our home, we didn't know where we were going to live back in Calgary and just felt if we were to have a home, it was going to be called Agape, which
Hmm.
is all generations, all people embraced. So I've just been asking, okay, God, what does that mean for me? What are you asking me to do? Where do I pour my energies? Because what I was happening in my life, I was pouring so much energy into things that was actually at this point in my life that was draining me. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
giving life and purpose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, I'm definitely still doing a lot of different things in, I guess, mentoring,
Yeah.
but it's more informal and it's coming out of relationship. If that makes sense. So,
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think the reason why I have both of you on is because in the series I'm connecting with mentors or people that were really formative in my own life, and I think those years and what Art said, which is shocking in '97, was when I decided to go to Youth with a Mission from Ontario all the way to British Columbia in this field camp where there was nothing. There was no urban city. And I landed there, and it was a very critical time in my life, especially my own faith. And I met you two. And thank God I met you two at that time because you both were very, very important in really where my life was going to go. Sort of the trajectory, I think, now as I look back, of where I was headed. And I think uh, why the mentoring and influence was because there were some very key conversations uh, and the way that you befriended me and loved me were very, very key to my life. And we can talk about that because I think how you led me, how you listened, how you held space to be present were new to me. Your language was very new to me. The way in which you operated in, yeah, just how you connected in friendship with me was very different. I wasn't used to that way of acceptance, but I think, yeah, it was really formative, and I think that's really which comes to this question. And I'll kind of like bounce around, but when I came in, be honest, because I don't know if our listeners and viewers know, like I was a bit of a mess, and you can be honest. You be honest. I don't mind. This is an authentic, safe space, but I was a bit of a mess coming into uh, YWAM, wasn't I?
I don't know if I would describe it that way.
Okay.
I wouldn't say you're
Well,
a
that's
mess.
gracious.
Well, you have to remember when we first saw you, we didn't know anything about you.
Right.
We don't really know. Outside of the things you divulge in your application, your testimony story, and these sort of things, right? But we didn't know you personally. We only know the things that we read. When we first saw you and met you, I think there was something in you and in us that drew us together. I can't say that it's not a looks thing or whatever. It's not commonalities. We were quite different. We
Mm-hmm.
were older, different in life. You
Mm-hmm.
came from a little bit different in a history or background and maybe things that we were accustomed to. But I don't know what it was. Something draws us together, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't always happen in every person that you meet. Even as much as you try and you hope in a school when you have what we have 30 of us or something. I can't remember.
It was a pretty big school.
Well,
that
for
we had.
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah.
Kelowna,
Kelowna.
but
Yeah.
but it's not guaranteed. Like there are people there that I barely remember that person. Others I completely remember with depth and honesty, and it impacted our lives as much as hopefully we helped impact others too. And I think you were always one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say you were a mess. When we saw you,
Okay.
there's
I,
something about you. Maybe it was fraudulent. I don't know,
hmm.
but a bubbliness,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
a smile, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a delightfulness about you. We didn't know honestly. I think I even probably talked to Corina or remember Charles. We talked with Charles too. He's like, I'm not sure about that. Melinda, is it real? Is
Mm-hmm.
it she putting on a show?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're bubbly right from the beginning, from what I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you were a mess though. That's not
Okay.
how I would have.
Maybe internally I was. Karina, what are your thoughts when you like?
When I first met
Yeah.
you, like I said before, I felt like you were this wild stallion.
Yep. I actually have that written down. I have that to
Yeah,
talk about.
like
Yep.
just wow. It's kind of like here comes Mel, here she is, and yeah, I just felt like there's this beautiful stallion, but kind of wild,
Mm-hmm.
kind of everywhere. But people were attracted to you, and I
Yeah.
I remember you saying you didn't have a lot of girlfriends at that time. That
No.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you remember how many the girls just were drawn to you? I don't know. You shared your dresses, your clothes, and
Always the key. Always the
yeah,
key. Share your
the
clothes and
girls were
dresses with
like,
girlfriends, and you're
"Yeah,
in.
can I borrow that?" Like I remember, just the girls. I remember your birthday. And
Mm-hmm.
how, remember how we celebrated your birthday?
Mm-hmm. I
And
do.
all the girls dressed up and just, there's just something like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
Well,
remember.
and when I say a mess, I think in that time in my life, I was kind of coming out of this prodigal time. I felt, I think, internally, spiritually, like lost because I had all of this stuff I had done, had run away from God, and I was
Mm,
coming in. It almost felt like this last resort of like, am I going to get
Mm,
saved from these choices that I continually make or I had made? And I was very drawn to you. I think that for the two of you, and as we're talking about mentorship, because it seemed like for this, it was circumstantial where we kind of found each other, and then you were able to really mentor and lead me in that space of youth with a mission. But
yeah.
I really felt drawn to as well. I think there was a calm and peace, and yet an honesty about you too. And I think in the mentoring part, I think I'm grateful that you did take the time to mentor and be with me. I know that was part of your role in this mission time, but I also felt that you're even more intentional about that. I
yeah.
think just in spending the time with me to kind of mentor and kind of identify things.
Hmm. Actually, Art and I were talking about this. I feel like you chose us.
Hmm.
Like, because mentorship is, it's a two-way street. It's a relationship
Mm-hmm.
that's formed out of love and trust. And there's just something, I feel like you chose us because there was this vulnerability and humility
Hmm.
about you, Mel. Like you just were willing. So I feel like you chose us.
Hmm.
And then we responded to you in the way that, I don't know, you're always asking questions and willing to take even our feedback, or sometimes, I don't know if you call it
Yeah,
construction criticism, or just like, hey, but you really, you were very humble about that, and I just feel like you chose us.
that's a
Yeah,
neat way.
absolutely. I think
Yeah,
there's
Hmm.
these elements there
yeah.
that Mel, I think, you know, I remember you sharing a lot about the stuff that you'd come through and the hardships, the difficulties, the choices that you had made. But you
Hmm.
made a choice to come to YWAM, to DTS, to seek God. And in that humility of choosing
Hmm.
and that posturing of being willing to be molded by what God would do, I think opened the door for us
Hmm.
to be able to mentor,
Yeah,
Hmm.
if that's the word you like to use.
Hmm.
yeah.
But even for us to say anything into your life as leaders,
Hmm.
took you posturing your heart.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
I don't think we chose you, but we were fortunate to have you
Hmm.
come and be part of us, and that something mutual sparked, and that mutual giving and
Hmm.
sharing, giving and sharing,
Hmm.
created a bond that
Yeah,
allowed for mentorship. And
yeah,
unless you postured your heart, I don't think it would have worked.
that's
No.
right.
Yeah. That's actually really good because I think one of the things I'm finding, and I want to kind of go into mentorship, is that, I still think I'm 20 and I'm still like, oh, I need a mentor. And then yet I have all these young women coming to me going, can you mentor me? And then I start laughing because I'm like, oh, I'm too
Yeah,
young for that. How can I be
no,
your mentor? I need a mentor. And then I'm like, oh, wait a second. I'm in a different season. I'm in the stage and age where, oh my goodness, yes, I'm in that stage and age where now people are coming to me for mentorship. But what I'm finding is a lot of my girlfriends and guy friends are a little nervous about mentoring. They don't want to. There's a number of reasons for it. And so I'd love your thoughts on like why it's important because they're like, I don't think I have the time, or I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I have the right words. I'm not the perfect person to do it. And so I'm seeing a lot of people shy away from it when I have generations of people who are looking for people to
hmm,
mentor and do life with them. And we're seeing people going, I can't do it. What would you say really is not only the importance, and I hear about, you had some good things to say there about, being like a mentee, being open, but, what advice can you give to people who are nervous about it, afraid to do it, and what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think first I take that language down a notch,
Okay.
because sometimes the scariness is the language in itself,
hmm,
right?
yeah,
Mentor, that sounds like a huge word. It's a big
hmm,
word. It's a, you know, you research enough, mentor comes from Greek mythology, and has to do with Athena and the and all this sort of stuff. Well, we could take all that away because it's huge. The huge ramifications of what it means and the expectation beyond it, it's could be stifling. Because who is ready? Mel, we weren't ready. We weren't ready to mentor you. Uh, and
Yeah.
that's why if you choose that word now, okay, because I'm almost a senior citizen, so I can handle that word now. But remember, we were just barely 30 ourselves, and
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. We
Wow.
were,
You
yeah,
seem so much
we were,
older then.
yeah, we were just barely 30.
so to
Yeah.
use that word mentor would have been a scary thing. I would have pushed back on it.
Yeah.
But uh, there are other words we can use, maybe are helpful to what you can identify with, right? Like I love the word coaching. I love that.
Yeah.
Coaching people is good. Maybe there's a lot now moving in our Christian circles about eldership, right? So what does it mean to be an elder in the church or in a ministry? Maybe that stuff takes away some of that expectation of being a mentor, being a proficient at something, or what have you, have all your ducks in a row so you can lead out of your experience. I think if we take away some of that and humble ourselves a little bit. Here's the other thing is I think our world, we're too egocentric. I think we think about ourselves too much. And we can think about ourselves too much that how great we are, or it could be debilitating, and we think
We
about
think very
ourselves that
little
we
of
think
ourselves.
Right.
very
Yeah.
That we
little.
don't have anything to
But
offer.
yeah,
That's right. And I think it just I think it's about looking at the people in your life
Mm-hmm.
that you have. It's not that you have to seek out people, but it's who are the people in your life that you just see and love, right? Because we all go through stages and seasons in our life. All of us do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, how can I love that person better? How can I encourage them? Stop looking at myself of what I can, but what it's thinking about that other person.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
What are ways I can just love and encourage them?
Yeah.
Sometimes people
It
drop right into
opens,
your
it just drops in,
yeah.
and it's being aware of those people in your life that mean a lot. It might be your own peer, it might be someone younger, it could even be someone older. Because when you're talking about mentorship, it's not about age. It's not about sometimes even your own experience, but it can be.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I look at it. Who's in my life right now? Start with one person. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Who
Yeah,
can I love well at this time?
Good.
How can I encourage them?
Yeah.
and I think that
Make it
that
simplistic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
that's part
Yeah.
of it, right? Is just recognizing what's around you.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of all that terminology that can be very overstated and too much,
Yeah.
too big, too ideal, and it's just who are those that God's entrusted you to be in a relationship with,
Yeah.
Good.
and just be loving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good
It's
way.
like you
Oh, go
say,
ahead.
sorry, like you say in your show, when you feel loved, seen, when you feel heard, you have a place of belonging, that's when people start opening up. That's when people start being authentic and real,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's a place where they can tell their story. People want to tell their story.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to provide places like that. And it can happen over dinner. It can happen, let's just have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
When you provide that space where you're really wanting to listen and hear their story. How are you? Where are you at?
Yeah.
Where have you been? Where have you come from? And I've asked people that, like, hey, can I hear about this? And they like to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hearing
So
mentoring. I mean, really is this sense of doing life with someone, but also being intentional about
yeah.
listening to their story, like
Yes.
loving people
Yes.
where they're at. It doesn't have to be this like I know there's formal mentoring where some people mentor very
Yes.
specifically for a skill or whatnot, but then there's also
That's
very
right.
informal kind of life mentoring or coaching where
Yeah.
you're just being with them, and as they have questions, a safe space they can kind of share and you can give, because that's what really happened with, I know YWAM, and again, for people who don't know, Youth with a Mission, it was, how long was it, 6 months? It
Yeah.
really, it's
Yeah.
designed
Sure.
to get trained and then go onto the mission field,
Mhm.
share Jesus, share gospel, good news. Essentially, that was it. You were trained, and then you were sent out into different places to meet with people, and encourage and support the local church and whatnot. But I think, with us, really, in your mentoring, it was really doing life together for that time. It was really you spending time with me, listening, praying, identifying, and being honest about things in my own life that might have been a blind spot or that I didn't want to see, and yet you were loving me enough to identify those things and say those things. It was hard. It was probably hard for you guys to say them to me, and it was hard to receive. But I think real love and care is when that's said in love to help you and build character and change, detour. So I absolutely agree with that.
I also think that you mentioned it's good to have the context of what we're in.
Right.
The Youth of the Mission Discipleship Training School context is quite unique. People think, oh, 6 months, that's nothing. It's not 6 months of living in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's
No.
6 months of living together,
No.
Together.
Uh-huh.
24/7, over dinner, over
Mm-hmm.
breakfast, over cleanup, over all the normal life on life stuff. I mean, it was probably more unique and rare to get a moment by yourself
True.
in 6 months.
True. I
And so
remember.
the intensity of that, it
Yeah.
heightens
Yeah. It was. Yeah.
you can have a friend for 5 years and barely know them, but I think over a 6 month period, with how we dig into the Bible, how we dig into being honest and open with one another in small group as well as on individual one-on-one times and stuff, it all lends itself to, I guess the term that people have used often is this hot box environment.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if we know the
Yeah.
context of what a hot box
Yeah.
is, but anyway, I think we
Or a
smoke onto each
greenhouse.
other. A greenhouse effect,
Greenhouse.
absolutely,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We it gets intense,
Yeah.
and the vulnerabilities, I don't think are easily repeated in even if you're in college with people for that same 6 month period of time, it doesn't get close to that.
Yeah.
And maybe it takes you 4 years of being intentional with somebody over
Yeah.
time.
No, I agree. I mean, during YWAM, I mean, it was Nico climbing some mountain, just so
I
ridiculous.
think that was the start of
Yeah, that
it.
was the start, which was so
Nico.
ridiculous, and couldn't deal with that, especially in my like platform boot shoes, which I remember having to go get for the first time hiking boots, and they weren't platform. I didn't know what to do with myself. Um,
No, you bought. I think you bought hiking boots, if I remember correctly, but they weren't actually even hiking boots. I think they were hiking style
yeah, they might have been a
boots.
hiking, like yeah, hiking style boot. Yeah, it was the worst. I mean, everything about that. But here's the thing: what I found is hard things build character. Hard things
Absolutely.
said in love build care. Like honestly, that's why I mean, Youth with a Mission. That moment was really, really like pivotal in my life. As much as there were moments I
Yeah.
hated it and I wanted to go home, and I because who wants to address and look deeply into yourself, your character, what motivates you, what
Yeah.
what you need to feel adored, and all the things that you do for that. Like I mean, that's what I was identified, and I really am
Yeah.
thankful that through that messy coming to like honesty about myself, you two were there for me. I mean, and lots of conversations, lots of prayers, lots of moments together. We had to
Hmm.
be like,
Hmm.
Mel,
Hmm.
this is what we're seeing, this is what we're identifying, this is what we're encouraging you to, or our best advice. And I think that's what and when we call it mentoring or doing life together, I think the most important thing for us, I think there was trust. Like I would not
Hmm.
have done anything if I didn't trust you both. Like
Right.
I think there was like a sense of safety where I really felt I could be vulnerable, and in the vulnerability not be judged. And I think that
Right.
was really key too in this relationship, which I think are key things for any mentoring, coaching relationship. You need those things where
Right.
there's trust and safety, for that. Um, are you surprised at where I am now? Thinking back from where I was and how what I was like then, are you surprised?
No,
Okay.
No.
not at all.
Okay.
I think in some sense maybe, but not really.
Not really.
We we could always see
Yeah.
your gifts and
Yeah.
your talents,
Do
right?
you, where was that one time that you were gonna share your story, and you're like, I don't want
I
to
have
do
that
Oh,
written
this
you
down.
mean on outreach?
on
Oh, I have that
outreach.
written down as a major thing about you guys. Yep.
Mhm.
That was, yeah, and you really didn't want to do it, and then Art,
Art forced you.
yeah,
No,
Oh
no,
yeah,
yeah.
no,
Oh yeah. I
no,
would use the word
no.
force. You used the Holy Spirit. This is what God's saying, but it was a force. I remember that, and I had pimples and zits all over my face. I was hot. I was annoyed about Guyana. I'd been bitten by some chiggers. I don't know what was. I was not good, and it
Jiggers,
was
yeah.
oh,
forced.
chiggers, right,
I maybe it was,
No,
but
but
someone manipulated you to do it. But oh, yeah, your story
mm.
absolutely was amazing. I remember to that point, you felt your story was for other ladies,
Yeah, it was for
hmm
girls.
but you sharing,
Oh my goodness,
it was all the
wow,
men that came,
it was the
yeah,
fathers. It was the fathers who
I
were
remember that.
impacted.
or
Wow.
men in period in general,
Yeah,
came
It was
and
came
more
with their
men.
front
It was
foot.
more men and dads who were
it was
like,
more men.
we're not doing this well. We're not good to our daughters or kids or wives." And I
Yes,
was like,
yes,
"What just happened?"
Yeah,
yes.
You know that, and
right.
I'm just gonna say this, but I'll jump to it now. So that was the first time I actually publicly shared my
Mm,
story. Like this is
yeah,
really important because when people
Yeah.
say, "When was the first time you really shared your story? You were a storyteller. You spoke." It
Mm-hmm.
was, and I think I'm just like, man, when was that? And then I think back, and that moment of you
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote forcing me was actually the first time I publicly went up on stage and did that, which was the start, I believe, of
Mm-hmm.
something that God birthed in me about storytelling and the power of
Yeah.
when I don't want to, God has a bigger agenda plan than I ever thought, and can use me in my worst ever
yeah,
Yes.
to
Exactly.
then do something really incredible in His own plan. Because I remember that, guys. I remember that very. I wasn't supposed to speak that night. I think it was supposed to be you, Art, or somebody else was supposed to speak, and it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was one of you, or something was supposed to happen, and then you came to me and you were like, "Mel, this is what we really feel," and I was like, "No, I don't want to do it." I think I had a tantrum internally or externally. I don't know. I was not happy about it, and it was like, "Nope,
Yes.
it's you." And I had to get up on
yeah,
that stage and share my story about my dad and forgiveness and the poor choices I'd made. But when a father
Yeah.
forgives you and what it means
Yes.
to a
Right.
daughter and a woman, and I was terrified of sharing that because once you say something out loud, it's like it's out there, right? You can't take it
hmm,
back. And
right.
then seeing what happened there. But that was the start. That was the
Yeah,
start.
and it's beautiful. And I guess uh, my memory of that is again, it's the same as my memory of you coming
Mm.
to us in the first place. It's a posturing of your own heart again.
Yeah.
You could have easily resisted and and
Just
and
like
stuck
no,
your feet in the ground and forget that,
Hmm.
you
no
know,
thanks.
and it would none of this would have happened, right?
Yeah.
The
Yes.
catalyst of that would have never been actualized. And I think you taking time to actually take it back to your prayer room and go,
Yeah, I
God,
remember that.
what is this? Let me submit to you if this is you. Let me do what your will is in this. And you taking the time to do that was very necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, can you imagine if you would have resisted? What would we have done? We would have done something.
We would have done something.
God could have easily taken our second and our plan B, and made the best out of it, as
Yeah.
He often does in our lives. And something else wouldn't be necessary later on life for you to have to put it out there.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
guess, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think the.
I think.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, Mel. I'm just gonna. because you're alluding back to that first question, what are the necessities of it? I think it's this posturing of humility.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Humility and submission is a big deal. How do you mentor someone, or forget that? How do you teach anyone anything? I have a 22-year-old son who knows a lot, and oftentimes tells me he knows a lot more than I do.
We have an 18-year-old. We get it. Yeah.
Right. How do you teach them? How do you teach something? And sometimes when you run into, I'll say it, it's arrogance. Arrogance is the opposite of humility,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how do you teach someone? How are you taught if you come into something with arrogance? So I think this dynamic of the mentee being in a place posturing themselves to be uh,
Mm-hmm.
pliable,
Yeah.
to be moldable, is crucial. I don't think you can mentor those who refuse to learn, to grow, to change, to
Yeah.
shift from their position. I'm
Mm-hmm.
stuck here,
Yeah.
and you're not moving me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is your hand, when you hold up your hand, is your hand a fist or is it an open palm? I think those are two different representations of where your heart could possibly be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, Mel, I take it very humbly that you would call us mentors in
Mm-hmm.
any way, shape, or form. Like, I feel like we're friends. I feel like we've always
Yeah.
been friends.
Yeah.
And if we've had things to say and you've taken it as a mentoring or something from a discipleship thing, well, that's a posture between your heart and God more so than from us. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we honestly feel. We don't feel
Yeah.
like we've intentionally mentored you in any way, except to respond to what we feel God is saying, and then
Yeah.
we'll present it.
That's right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. Actually, I'm just taking this all in. I'm just listening to what that is. Well, I think this is the perfect segue for me to kind of gush about you because really what I'm doing is I'm actually just getting my mentors like, on the line so I can just talk to them about how much I appreciate them and what I said. So let me just tell you a few things that came to mind when I want to share some thoughts about you, which I've kind of said, but I think one of the things 100% for sure, number one, is that you both saw the potential in me, believed in me more than I believed in myself. Like I said earlier, I came into like Youth with a Mission, like, this is my last resort. I've got to go on a mission trip to get right with God, and had kind of this agenda of what it would look like. And then God blew it out of everything and changed everything of what I thought. And He put you guys in the picture. But I think, when you come out of kind of years of prodigal daughter syndrome, disappointing yourself and your family and God, and you're kind of like at this really low point. I didn't believe in myself in the sense of like, can God still use me? Will God still use me? Because look of all the stuff I've done. And the
Mm-hmm.
two
Mm-hmm.
of you really saw that in me. I think that's the number one thing I love about the two of you is that you really saw kind of like the gold in me, the the spark that was still there, and the potential that was in me when I didn't see it in myself. I really didn't. And I didn't know. I really felt like that was kind of like my last resort. And my parents would say that too. My parents would have said, you know, YWAM, Youth with a Mission, was kind of like the best thing that the church and us could have sent you on in that time in your life because you really kind of were lost. You didn't know what was happening, you didn't know where you were going, and you just sort of needed a place of safety where you could kind of like rebuild and have some moments to kind of really be with good people that would love you in this. So you both saw the potential in me, and I'm so grateful. You've always been really great champions of me, even then, but even throughout the years. Like, just always, I knew that whenever I would visit you in Calgary or times we could connect, you always were just great champions, cheerleaders for me. And everybody needs a good cheerleader. I've been a cheerleader, and I know what that's like for my football teams when I was in Singapore and even in Mississauga, cheering on your team. And you always were like that, cheering me on and through some difficult situations where, we're going through my divorce or going through some hard things, still cheering me on, believing in me. And so I so appreciate that. And then, Corina, you brought up that I think you both are truth tellers in a great, loving way. This whole wild stallion was free, but you're like, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love that. I can relate to the wild stallion. But you're like, yes, but you need some boundaries and some fencing in, because a wild stallion going free is this beauty untamed, but there also needs to be some boundaries on life and decisions and focus. And I think, Corina, to this day, I still remember that very clearly. And it was said in great love.
Really?
Like, you're a wild stallion. You've got
Yeah.
all this energy and passion. You're wild and gifted. However, we need to kind of in this time sort of bring you in and some focus and character and questions you need to ask yourself. And so I really love that. I also, again, we talked about this, encourage me to do my first sort of public speaking about very honest, hard things about my life. And yet, you know, we believe God is saying you. And I think there's something about that, about seeing again the potential, uh, believing again in me when I didn't for myself. Because again, I think, here's the other thing I will say. The part of why I didn't want to art go and speak was, I think there was a part of shame and being ashamed of the story. Like, who am I to stand on stage and talk to people about my own faith in God when I had done all these things that seem so anti God and anti good decisions? Um, and yet you guys were very clear on, this is what we believe God is saying, and so you're gonna go do it. And I remember that, having to go pray about it and wrestling not only with you guys but also with God. And then it wasn't resolved. I don't think I really heard God say I was at peace. I think it was more of an obedience thing, being faithful and trusting that you guys knew what you were talking about. Trusting you when I didn't even trust myself to feel that I could speak and that I could stand on a stage and platform and share. And I'm telling you now, that's actually at the core of where I'm at today. Because there are still moments when I get up on stage or get up in front on the studio set in front of thousands of people on TV. And there are moments where I'm like, oh my goodness, am I the right person to do this? Can I do this? My life. And God still continues to say, it's my story enmeshed in your story. And this is for that person that I love. So go and speak. So, and then I think just you've been very, both of you, just faithful in prayer and friendship. We don't get to hang out a lot and see each other a lot and connect, but I always know I can kind of come back anytime to your home and this or moments and just say it's a safe space. So thank you for that. That's my gushing on you both. I'm so grateful for the two of you in those things in my life.
We appreciate that. I think, yeah, I would never have described it as a mentoring relationship in the beginning. And even now, I don't think I would, honestly. I think there's a mutuality there that we can, we learn a lot from watching your program and things like this too, right? And we are as humbled now. As we get older, we're more humbled. And
Yep.
as we, our advice to
Yes.
you moving forward into the next generation too, Mel, stay humble in this all. I think where the beginning of it all was beautiful. The humility to learn from the Lord, and as you grow with more success, that you stay more humble. You don't become more uh, prideful
Hmm.
or arrogant or look at all that I do. No, we don't see that in you, Mel. We still see you as our buddy Mel,
Good.
my little duckling. My,
It's true. Oh yeah, it always was like that. Uh, as we talk about, mentorship and leadership and eldership and coaching, I do want to talk about, because I know you're about this. I'm about next generation. What would you say, and Karina, we can kind of go back and forth, you and then Art, but what would you say would be your kind of top leadership tips or habits for the new leader, the next generation? And you have a son, so this is perfect. That they need to cultivate to be not just a great leader, but a really great person. And I say this because so many people, millennials, and then I've got a 13-year-old and 18-year-old, and we're in that stage and age where a lot of people are like, what are things, Mel, like next generation, who like that I need to really cultivate a habit or a character or a tip to really make me a great leader or a great person overall? What would you say? Maybe Karina, let's start with you, and then we can kind of go back and forth, you and
Hmm.
Art. But just your thoughts for the next generation.
For the next
Mm-hmm.
generation, I think for this next generation, they need, like we've talked about, a place where they can, the new word is
Hmm.
deconstruct.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We hear
Yep.
that a lot, right? Like, it's interesting because I know, I guess around Evan's age, who are in high school, even college, they're really questioning their
Yep.
faith, or if they've gone to church for all their life, is like, why do I need to continue? How is this
Hmm.
real? So I believe they need that
Hmm.
place, a safe place where they can question, where they can really talk about the things that they're not sure about, even in their faith or Christianity, or what they've seen maybe in their own church. I think, yeah, we need to be there
Hmm.
for them. They also need a place where they feel loved and a place of belonging. Um, yeah, they need a place where they can, if they are feeling lonely, they need to be set in a place where they feel a place of belonging and a family. Um, and I think the other thing is being able to ask
Hmm.
questions for them to just reflect and think about why they believe or how they
Yeah.
feel. And yeah, um, I think it also helps, I guess, like Art said, it's not just always looking at
Hmm.
yourself. Because with this whole likes, with social media, it's so easy to get caught up that your worth is what other people
Yeah.
think of you, how many likes, but that their worth and who they are, that's how God
Hmm.
created them. They need to know that love, the unconditional love. I mean, it's like we've talked about. Christ loved us while we were sinners. So we need to love them unconditionally where they're at. That it's not about trying to change and conform them to be, but yeah, they need that place to
Yeah.
question. Also in the sense of and reflecting, but also be in a place that they have a lot to offer too.
Hmm.
They have a lot to give, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that look like then, Karina, in the context of church community, dinner church, small group, just family? Like I think, and I absolutely agree. I think a lot of people are like, what does that look like for them? Is that, do we start within the
Hmm.
church, or is it more like we just need to have honest conversations and we just sort of gather them together over a meal?
Yeah, I think for us it's always started at
Hmm.
home. Like we can say that actually at home with Evan, where we actually allow him to question, hey, and
Yeah.
disagree with us. It's done in a pretty respectful way, but he has lots of questions, and just giving him that room. And I don't. We've never really forced Evan to be something or be in youth. That kind of came on his own, where we realized he can't jump on our faith. It has to be his own journey and his discovery, and even giving him room to make mistakes, right? Without condemning him all the time and being on him, but discovering and giving him a place where it's not just about mom and
Yeah.
dad anymore, but he's been able to find, I don't know if you want to call it relationships where it has been impactful, mentorship has come, doing things with his peers to make a
Right.
difference. But it was never us helicoptering over him all the
That's good.
time. And yes, do we speak to him when we feel yes, but it's also giving him space to, yeah,
That's good. I love that.
I don't know.
I love
Yeah.
that. Art, for you, if you work with young people, what would you say would be some good habits for them to cultivate to be a great leader, or maybe potentially a great coach, or you know mentor to others? What would you say?
Yeah, oftentimes it seems like strange language, new vocabulary, and foreign concepts that I talk about. But in this generation, humility is weird. They don't understand what
Hmm.
humility means, right? So, humility. I have three words that bounce around all the time. It's humility. it's submission, and it's
Yeah.
love. This
Yeah.
generation has some understanding of what love
Hmm.
is, and we can debate about whether or not they understand the depth of love. If we talk about agape love, it may not be fully understood, but there's some concepts of love, or they have opinions of love. Humility, it's a bit wacky. It's countercultural to this
Hmm.
generation. Humility, thinking of yourself in a meek place, is countercultural. And the idea of submission, that is wacky.
We don't even use that word. What is it?
What is absolutely
Yeah.
it's almost they equate it. I don't want to misread it, but oftentimes it seems like they equate it with some abusive
Hmm.
place. That being submissive is a good, easy place for you to be abused. But I don't think it's that. In Wyman, we used to talk about being fat. Do you
Yeah.
Yeah.
remember this?
Remember?
Faithful, available, and teachable.
Yeah.
So faithful to God and others,
Mm-hmm.
um, and and showing faithfulness,
Mm-hmm.
and being available for what, just instead of being stuck in the mud. I refuse to do that. Being available. That's what you had to
Yeah.
do. You had to be available. Make yourself available, and be teachable. Be teachable in the circumstances and the moments and things that are around. And all of that is based around humility, submission to the
Hmm.
Lord and those that potentially that He puts in place over you and
Hmm.
around you. And submission for us sometimes comes to being submissive to, in this moment, son, you get to tell us what to do, right? You're 22, I'm not, but I will submit to you in this.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I posture myself in a place of, of learning right now. And so we can't model these sort of things. How do we expect them to embrace it,
Yeah.
right? And love is important, but truly understanding agape, truly
Mm-hmm.
understanding this unconditional, unmerited kind of favor and
It's
love
amazing.
of
I love
God.
that.
And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
these are huge for us to try to model and encourage in this
Yeah.
generation. And it's language they're not accustomed to. It's habits they don't know. Like, how many people care to have X number of likes on their posts and things that they're doing, and this is how they find their
Hmm.
value, is by how many people
Yeah.
follow them or like them or
Mm-hmm.
retweet them. Do they even tweet? I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, they do. No, and I think that's really important. I think you both said some really important things. So I think on Karina's side, it was kind of you know, kind of like a conversation to those who are older, where it's like we need to create safe spaces where next generation can deconstruct, ask questions, be honest. I think that's really important. I think even for ourselves, like Chris and I with our own kids who are 13 and 18, are we creating a home that's like that? We are. Sometimes it's hard because you kind of want to be like, I'm telling you what it is, and this is how I want you to think. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not going to do anything, right? But I also think for a lot of people, boomers, Gen Xers, we have to create those safe spaces for young people to feel safe to share and then learn art about what does
Yeah.
humility mean in submission and love, right? Because they're going to find that online, they're going to find that on YouTube, they're going to find that with their friends. But if we don't have those spaces of honest conversation where we can, share and talk about humility and submission and love and demonstrate it, they're going to find it somewhere else. And so I think that's really, really important. These are great, great things. Well, I know that I could talk with you for 5 more hours, and we probably will at some point. I'll give you guys a call, or I'll have to definitely come to Calgary, Alberta, and do a visit. But
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you, Art and Karina, for just spending this time with me, for being such a formative part of my life, for being, I'm going to say mentor Art, but for a coach, mentor, elder, friend to me, and just for your presence, love, and leadership to not only me, but to so many in the spaces that you lead and you love. So I just want to say thank you so much for spending this time. And to our listeners and our viewers, our prayer and hope is that you will find a mentor or coach, or friend that you can do life with, that you will choose to be a mentor and coach for a young person that needs direction and encouragement, that you will be a champion for those that need one, that you will see the potential in others who don't see it in themselves, that you will be truth tellers said with love to those who need to hear it, and that you will live out humility and submission and love today. And as you do, know that you are seen, heard, and deeply loved by God. Thanks for joining us today.